Introduction. Hello, brave listener, to this, my fourth and the long-awaited final edition of the audiobook of my short story, Robert Diablo. If you'd asked me a year ago if I'd ever narrate one of my stories, my answer would have been, hell no. But it seems like the rigors of 2020 seem to make me a bit adventurous. I guess being stuck at home during a pandemic really gets the artistic juices flowing and makes you take risks you wouldn't think of before. Anyways, it was after I finished the narration of the sequel story to Robert Diablo, Fashion and the Fashionable Demon, that I finally kicked myself in the backside and decided that the fans had had enough of robotic narrations and it was time that I joined the likes of Stephen King and go through the hell of narrating my own work. In fact, this narration will be my fourth one. Besides narrating Fashion and the Fashionable Demon, I've narrated a short story by my protege, Christopher Hyland, titled Fun and Funeral, as well as narrating the Dr. Seuss classic, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I know several people will be excited about me doing this narration because over the years, they've asked me to do voices for some of the characters from Robert Diablo. Most notably Christopher Blackthorn, Robert Diablo, and the most popular being Dick Hadley. So there you are. The time has come. I hope you enjoy this production as much as I have bringing it to you. William Pattison, The COVID Pandemic. Robert Diablo, from Symphony of Death, Part 1, by William Pattison, inspired by the classic film Harvey. Lovingly dedicated to Jen and Sylvia Soska. 9:15 a.m. August 14th, 2013. The office of Richard J. Hadley, attorney at law. The trappings of the rich and influential, Dr. Edmund Harte thought, shaking his head as he stepped into the lawyer's office. This was definitely not a public defender like he was used to dealing with. It seemed he had gone up in the world for some reason. Lucky me, he thought. The outer office was lavishly covered in oak paneling and furnished with matching furniture. He noticed there was an intricately decorated red velvet sofa against the wall to his right. Also, there was a large flower-patterned rug that nearly covered the hardwood floor. Hart stepped up to the secretary's desk. The young lady behind the desk looked up from her computer and smiled at him. "May I help you?" she asked simply. "Mr. Hadley is expecting me," the doctor said, giving the young, attractive, raven-haired girl a warm smile in return. "Tell him it's Dr. Harte." Without reply, The girl hit the red button on the intercom on her desk and said, "A Dr. Harte is here to see you, sir." "Send him in, Veronica," came the reply a moment later, "and bring some coffee for the two of us." "Yes, sir," she replied. Then she looked up at Dr. Harte. "He'll see you through the door." She indicated the mahogany door behind her desk. Dr. Harte headed over to the door, turned the gold-colored doorknob, and went inside. Mr. Hadley's office was even more impressive than the waiting room outside. Again, the walls were covered in wood panels, but these were covered with carved images of wildcats and wolves. In two alcoves on either side of the huge, imposing mahogany desk were two Ming vases. Between those was a huge oil painting of three hunters standing over a dead male lion. The portrait was incredibly detailed, right down to the puddle of blood in front of the lion. Harte recognized one of the hunters as the man behind the desk. "Do you like my painting?" the man behind the desk asked. "In this world you are either predator or prey. What are you, doctor?" "Mr. Hadley?" Dr. Harte asked as he walked up the burgundy rug adorned with gold-colored fringe towards the desk. "Mr. Hadley was my father," the man in the blue Italian suit and red tie said, getting up and extending his hand. "Call me Dick." "Nice, Dick," Dr. Harte said, giving the lawyer a firm handshake. "Then you can call me Ed." Dick Hadley looked familiar to Dr. Harte, but he couldn't quite place where he saw him. "Wonderful, 100%, I'll do that," Dick Hadley said, giving Harte a smile that reminded him of a shark. The man's teeth were unnaturally white. They practically glowed. "So, what is your answer to my question, Ed? Are you predator or prey?" "I'm neither. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a gray area," Harte said, hoping it amused his host. "Indeed you are, Ed," Dick said, giving the humorous response a little chuckle. "And that is why you're here." "You said you needed my help on a medical situation?" Harte said. "Yes, indeed," Dick said, pointing at him in a very dramatic way and nodding his head. "I like a man that's to the point. No playing around, straight to business. That's the way to be in this world." Dick motioned for Dr. Harte to sit down in one of two red velvet-seated leather chairs that were sitting in front of his desk. The doctor took the offer and sat down on the chair to Dick's right. Dick sat down in his own throne-like, high-backed leather chair. Then he grabbed up a file from the desk and handed it over to the doctor. "You keep up with news, Ed?" Dick asked. "For the most part," Dr. Harte said. "How about the Christopher Blackthorn murder case?" Dick asked. Now Dr. Harte knew where he'd seen Dick. He was the lawyer who was defending Christopher Blackthorn. This intrigued him. "I've seen a few things," Harte lied. The truth was that he knew all the information that had been released in the media. He knew Blackthorn was being accused of viciously murdering one of his own security guards with his own two hands. What he was interested in was how much Dick was willing to clue him in on. Dr. Harte opened the file and started looking through it. Inside was a copy of the police report along with a number of crime scene photos. The photos showed that the guard's head had been completely twisted around. Harte looked at the mugshot of the skinny, mousy-looking Christopher Blackthorn and wondered how the hell anyone could think this weakling could do that to a hulking, muscle-bound security guard. It had to be a joke. "If you are unaware, Ed, I'm the head of the defense team for Christopher Blackthorn," Dick said. "The family asked me to recruit you to do a psychological evaluation of Christopher and make clear that he is mentally incompetent to go to trial. With your recommendation, I can put leverage on the prosecution, and instead of having this poor boy sent to prison where he couldn't possibly survive, I could have him sent to a private facility where he can get the care and help he needs." Poor boy, Harte thought. Christopher Blackthorn was a 26-year-old man. As for the family's desire to keep him out of jail and having him proved incompetent, he knew their motivation for that. It all had to do with money, that being Dear Daddy's estate. Christopher had been named the sole heir to his father's estate and made head shareholder of Blackthorn Industries. This mousy little weakling was worth nearly $1 billion. He had been left the perfect puppet for his family. Harte was sure the family was shitting bullets right now at the thought of anything interfering with their meal ticket. Prison for Christopher could mean the end of the Blackthorn empire and the family falling into ruin. That just wasn't acceptable. It would be better to have dear Christopher sent to a mental facility where they could claim guardianship over him and take control of all his assets. Really nice arrangement for them. Yes, Harte knew the game too well. He'd seen this scenario played out over and over again. Now Dick and the family were offering him a chance to profit from this unfortunate situation. How could he say no? Was he above corruption? Fuck no! Dick picked up a yellow sticky note off his desk, pulled a shiny gold pen from inside his well-tailored jacket, and wrote something on it. Then he proceeded to hand the paper off to Harte. "What do you think of that number, Ed?" he said, giving him another of those shark-like smiles. "That is going to be yours for your trouble if you accept this job. Payment made after the trial, of course. No need for any appearance of impropriety." Harte looked at the paper. The amount was twice what he made on his best year. "Why me?" he asked, slipping the paper in his shirt pocket. He wanted to be sure he had proof of the offer in case Dick or the family forgot. He knew the answer to his own question. But hey, the drama had to be played out. Dick knew he had him sold, but procedures and formalities had to be maintained. He was sure Dick was even recording this meeting. It was the way of any Faustian deal. I read about the incredible work you did in the family property massacre case, Dick informed him. Most of my colleagues thought Derek Jones was surely going to get death row, but you managed to get him off on a mental and sent to a mental facility. I have to say that was just outstanding work on your part, Ed. I simply interviewed Derek Jones and looked at his background and made my diagnosis. Derek had mental issues that affected his sense of right and wrong. It was at that moment that Dick's secretary arrived with a metal cart that had a pot of coffee, 2 flower-patterned cups, a small bowl with sugar in it, and a small metal cream dispenser. Also, there were 2 flower-patterned plates with 2 French vanilla cookies on each one. Very fancy. That will be all, Veronica, Dick told her. I think we can serve ourselves. The secretary nodded and immediately left. So, how do you like your coffee, Ed? Dick said, smiling at him with those glowing white teeth again, while he was pouring some coffee into one of the cups and handing it to Harte. Harte knew exactly what was going on here. Dick was assessing him. Dick was interested in finding out who he was getting in bed with. I like it black, Harte lied. In fact, he was a cream and 2 sugar man, but he couldn't let Dick know that. Dick was a man's man, and cream and sugar were signs of weakness. So were prissy French cookies. Cookie? Dick asked, eyeing him. No, thank you, Harte said. He was in the presence of a predator, and weakness was something you didn't want to show. Dick's smile widened. He poured himself some coffee and dropped 2 sugars in his cup. After all, he was the king of beasts here. He also took one of the cookies and bit into it. I have to say, Ed, in the short time we've been together here, you've assured me that I've made the right choice. Harte took a sip of his coffee. It was French roast and bitter as shit. He smiled and nodded his head. Then he sat his cup back on the cart and went back to looking at the file. The file mentions that Christopher blamed the murder on someone called Robert. Who is that? Harte asked, looking up at Dick, who was just finishing his cookie. Good catch there, Ed, Dick said. You've hit the nail on the head. Robert is an imaginary friend Christopher has concocted. Harte raised his eyebrows. Really? Yes, indeed. The family has informed me that Christopher has had this supposed friend since he was 12. Dick slapped his hands together and rubbed them. I knew that would intrigue you. Oh, yes, he was intrigued. At first he had thought it might be a case of an adrenaline rush from some of the stress of being pushed around once too often. Now he was wondering if it might even be a full-on case of split personality. Now that would be something he'd love to explore, even without the rich people wanting to shower him with money. After all, he was a psychiatrist, and these were the types of cases you chose this profession for. I wish to see Christopher before I make a decision as to if I want to take on this case. Can you arrange that? Harte asked. Indeed I can, Dick said, steepling his fingers. When would you like to go? Immediately, of course, Harte told him. Dick started laughing. I definitely like you, Ed. That is the fire and thunder I like to see. Dick grabbed up his phone and dialed. Hello, Gomez. This is Dick Hadley. I'm sending over a Dr. Edmund Harte to see my client. Could you please have him a pass ready when he gets there? Thanks, and you have yourself a wonderful day, my friend. You're all set, Dick told him. Good, Harte said. I'll also need to see his home environment as well after I'm done with my meeting with Christopher. I'll inform the family that you'll be paying them a visit, Dick said, getting up out of his chair and extending his hand again. Well, it's been a pleasure to meet you, Ed, and it will be nice working with you. We'll see, Harte said, giving Dick another firm handshake. Oh, I'm sure of it, Dick said, giving him another shark-like smile. I can see it, Doctor. You're as hungry for this case as I am. A predator can sense another predator. Harte flashed Dick a smile of his own before heading up the red carpet and out the mahogany door. Once he was in the outer office, he started for the door but was stopped by two slender, dark-haired twin girls in black knee-length dresses who had been waiting on the red velvet couch. Both black-banged girls jumped up and blocked his way in unison. It caught Harte completely by surprise. You're the doctor Dick got to check out our brother, right? Asked the more assertive twin like she was talking to a flunky. Harte knew exactly who these girls were. They were Christopher's twin sisters, Janet and Sandra Blackthorn, or as they were called by the media, the Twisted Duo. These girls were known for getting into the rag magazines, for constantly getting into drunken antics and ending up in jail. These were the two ego cases Harte recalled who went and pelted a runway model with tampons at a Christian Dior fashion show. They were, of course, told to leave, and the fight that ensued ended up getting both girls locked up and permanently banned from attending any more Christian Dior events by the designer himself. In his line of work, Harte had encounters with a lot of celebrities, some good, some bad. In this case, he would file this one in the latter. I'm Dr. Harte, he said simply. Well, we can save you a lot of trouble, Doc, the assertive twin said. Our brother is a certified nutcase. Isn't that right, Sandra? Couldn't say it better myself, Janet, the other twin said, nodding her head. Are those my favorite girls in all the world? Harte heard Dick say from behind him. Immediately the two girls broke away from Harte and ran over and laid kisses on both of Dick's cheeks, leaving fire engine red lipstick marks on him. Hey, Daddy, we were talking to the doc and telling him that our stain of a brother is a nutcase and he should just write him off and let us get back to our lives, Janet said as she rubbed up against Dick on his right side. Isn't that right, Sandra? Fucking yeah, sis, Sandra said, rubbing up to Dick on his left. Daddy? Okay, Harte thought. Too much information I didn't need or want to know. His mind was now filled with images of what could only be described as a dick sandwich. He felt incredibly dirty at that moment. Now, girls, I know you have the best of intentions, but we must let Dr. Harte do his job. The court expects him to give his honest opinion on our poor Christopher's mental condition. We must allow him to do that, Dick told them. This elicited boo-hoo faces from the girls. Now come on, girls. Let's give our fine doctor a chance. I'm sure he'll make the right decision, Dick told them. Then he pulled 2 lollipops out of each pocket on the sides of his coat and held them up for the girls to see. The girls immediately grabbed up the lollies and unwrapped them. Thank you, Daddy, they said in unison as they started licking the red suckers in a very sexually suggestive way. Harte definitely felt dirty watching this display. All he wanted to do was get away from this. You better go over to the jail and meet with your patient, Ed. I'll meet you over at the house later, Dick suggested. Thank God, Harte thought. Catch you later, he said as he made a rapid escape out the door of the office. He had enough of all the Peyton Place bullshit and definitely enough of Dick for the time being. He wanted the cleansing feeling only a true nutcase could give him, so he was off to jail to meet the wacky Mr. Christopher Blackthorn. "11:45 a.m., Hawthorne County Jail. Hello, Dr. Harte said as he came up to the reception desk at the County of Hawthorne Jail. This was a fairly new jail building. It had been only open since 2010, and Harte had only come here twice. Dick Hadley sent me. I'm Dr. Harte. Yes, doctor. We've been expecting you, the Spanish security guard behind the desk said, handing Harte a baby blue clip-on badge with his name on it and the word pass in large letters above his name. Harte clipped the badge on the breast pocket of the brown sport coat he wore. Then he even adjusted his navy blue tie. Head down to the end of the hall and Gomez will take you from there, the guard told him and pointed to the hall on the right of his desk. Harte nodded his head and headed down the long, white, unadorned hall. His footfalls echoed as he walked. His nose was assaulted by the smell of a highly chemical-smelling cleaning solution. Harte had not been to this part of the jail. He gathered this was the section for the very select criminals, the ones that couldn't be in the general population. At the end of the hall was a heavy glass security door. To the left of it was a large red button with a simple sign above it that read, "Press to enter." Harte pressed the button, and there was a large buzzing sound that echoed down the hall. Then he heard the sound of gears, and the door slowly opened. Dr. Harte, the shaved-head Latino guard with the heavy mustache said as he came up and stood in the doorway. Gomez, I presume, Harte asked. At your service, Gomez said, opening his hands in a gesture of acceptance. Dick said you wanted to see my model guest. Yes, I do, Harte said. So, Christopher is a model guest? Harte asked with amusement. Yes, he is. I get a lot of guys through here, and I have to say he has been a pleasure. All the guy does is read books and play chess and talk to himself. I couldn't ask for a better guest, Gomez said with a smile. Then the guard raised his hand and waved the doctor to come through the door. Once inside, Harte was facing a white desk with two other guards behind it. Please empty your pockets and put everything in the tray. You'll get it back when you leave. Harte did as he was told. They had him put his belt, wallet, all his stray change, and even his handkerchief, tie clip, and wedding ring in the tray. Harte tried to keep his gold-colored pen and notepad, but Gomez made him put them in as well. I need those to take notes, the doctor insisted. Oh, don't worry, doctor. We got that taken care of, Gomez said as one of the other guards held up several sheets of paper and a box of crayons. Harte looked at Gomez questioningly. Hey, this homie killed one of his own security guards. The administration doesn't want to take any chances, Gomez told him. Figuring it would be a waste of time, Harte grabbed the paper and crayons from the other guard. Happy? Harte asked. Just one more thing, Gomez said as he grabbed a white plastic wand device off the desk and started running it over the doctor's body. Harte shook his head. This over-the-top security shit got on his nerves, but procedures were procedures. You're clear, Gomez said with a big smile on his face. Harte suspected Gomez and his associates had enjoyed putting him through all that. After all, they were kings of their own little kingdom, and everyone had to bow to their will, be it criminal, lawyer, or even a visiting psychiatrist. One of the guards behind the desk hit one of two red buttons on a control sitting on the desk. Once again there was a sound of gears, and the white door slowly opened. Follow me, Gomez said, smiling at him and waving for him to follow. The doctor did as he was told. Once through the door, Harte saw that he was in a white hall with metal doors on either side. The doors had small viewing windows and large numbers painted on them in red. As he passed, Harte took a quick glance in each. The first one was empty, but when he passed the second, he saw a large, bald head face looking at him. Suddenly there was a loud slam against the door, and the man inside started screaming. The sound was blunted by the heavy door, but it was still audible. It caused Harte to jump. Enough of that, Jacob, Gomez said, going up to the door and hitting it with his nightstick. The man behind the window started to whimper and backed away. Sorry about that, Doc, Gomez said. That guy is on his way to the funny farm. We're just waiting on the paperwork. He killed his mother and ate her eyes in soup, Gomez said with an amused smile. Amusing, Harte said, and continued down the hall. He honestly didn't want any more details. "Your boy is over here," Gomez said, pointing at the door across the way that had a large 4 painted on it. Harte went up to the door and looked inside. He was surprised by what he saw. Christopher Blackthorn was sitting on an intricately carved wooden chair. In front of him was a carved table with what looked like an ivory chess set sitting on top of it. To the side was a large carved wood bed with red flowered bedspread and 2 matching pillows. Harte looked over at Gomez questioningly. Gomez shrugged his shoulders. "The dude's family talked with the boss and allowed him all this. Hey, he even gets his meals shipped in from fancy restaurants. What can I say? I just work here." Harte shook his head. "The rich," he thought. Gomez unlocked the door and there was a loud clank as the bolt retracted. "You got a visitor," Gomez said as he opened the door. "Thank you, Gomez. Please have the doctor come and please close the door behind you," came the quiet, soft, almost feminine reply. Gomez looked over at Harte questioningly. "I'll be fine," Harte told him. "I'll be outside if you need me," Gomez informed the doctor. "Thank you, Gomez. We'll call you if we need you," Christopher Blackthorn said, glancing over at him with a dismissive look on his face. "Yes," Harte said, nodding his acknowledgement at Gomez. With that, Gomez headed out the door, and Harte once again heard the clanking of the bolt again, but this time locking him in. "So, Doctor, did you have fun talking to Dick? Did he show you the painting? I find it grotesque. Death is nothing to be glorified," Christopher said. "How do you know I had a meeting with Mr. Hadley?" Harte asked. "Now you know he likes to be called Dick," Christopher said with a light chuckle. "But in answer to your question, I have a friend that keeps me informed." "And who is that? Gomez?" Harte asked. "You know who I'm talking about. You and Dick talked about him at your meeting," Christopher told him. "Really?" Harte said. "Well, I would like to hear it from you. After all, it's just you and me here, and I doubt Gomez is listening." "It's all right, Robert," Christopher said, looking over at the empty chair across from him. "Don't take offense. After all, he can't see you." "Who are you talking to, Christopher?" Harte said, looking over at where Christopher was looking. "Don't be coy, Doctor," Christopher said, glancing over at Harte. "Dick told you about Robert." "Dick mentioned you had an imaginary friend," Harte admitted. "Robert isn't an imaginary friend, he's real. Just because people like you can't see him doesn't make him imaginary," Christopher said forcefully. "He is more real to me than that freak show I have to call a family." "Why do you call your family a freak show?" Harte asked. "Well, you've met the twins, or should I say twits. Wouldn't you describe those two as skanky freak cases? Christopher pointed out. You haven't met the bitch yet. Dear old domineering Jessica. That bitch thinks everyone should bow down and worship her. She is of the misconception that she is the boss of the household. But you'll see that for yourself when you go over to the house later. How do you know I met the twins? Harte pushed. Honestly, the fact that Christopher knew what he did was royally creeping him out. I told you. Robert told me every detail about your meeting with Dick and your run-in with those two bitch sisters of mine, Christopher reminded him. And I gather Robert told you I was planning to go over to the estate later, Harte asked. He had to admit that Christopher was looking like an intriguing subject. Robert tells me everything, Christopher told him. And how does Robert get this information? Harte asked. He wanted to see how far this delusion went. Robert keeps an eye on things for me. He can travel real fast, flying from place to place. My sisters or Dick can't take a shit without me knowing it, Christopher said. Robert seems to be a real loyal friend to do all that for you, Harte said. He is. Robert also loves to listen on all their scheming. It makes him laugh. He finds most humans very comical. He especially enjoys all the pious people who act all positive and superior. He loves to look behind their masks and see all the self-doubt hidden within. And what does Robert see when he looks at me? Harte asked. He felt it might give him a framework for future dealings with this patient. Robert says that you are a rare breed among humans. You are a man committed to the search for truth. Other people say they are, but the truth is that they are interested in the truth as long as they can manipulate it to their own advantage. You are not that way. You seek the truth to gain a perspective on the world and to use that perspective to benefit others, Christopher told him. Robert says he is going to enjoy seeing you corrupted by the temptations my family will throw out to you. I think it will be an interesting experiment. Harte went over to the metal door and pounded on the window. He'd heard enough. Leaving so soon, Doctor? Christopher said, looking over at him with only half interest. I really thought the three of us were really hitting it off. I'll be back tomorrow, Harte told him. Robert and I will look forward to it. I'm intrigued to find out what questions you're going to ask me, Christopher admitted. Consider my door always open for you, though in truth I don't make those decisions. At that moment, Harte heard the loud clank again, and Gomez opened the door. Harte waved goodbye, but found that Christopher's attention was firmly focused on his chess game with Robert. Once he was outside, he turned to Gomez. Did any of your people mention to him I was coming? No. Besides me coming this morning to bring him his breakfast and take away the tray after, no one has been back here. And I don't like talking to that guy. He gives me the creeps. Why? Gomez responded. Don't worry about it, Harte told him. I was just wondering. 11:53 a.m. The Blackthorn Estate. Harte drove his gunmetal-colored Jeep Cherokee up to the huge, weathered-looking iron gate with a large B with 2 leaves on either side of it in the center. On the driver's side, there was an old-fashioned intercom with a large speaker and a white button beneath it. Harte rolled down his window and pressed the button. "I'm Dr. Edmund Harte. I believe I'm expected," he said into the speaker. A couple moments later, he heard the clattering sound of chains being pulled by sprockets, and the gate slowly started opening. Once the gate was fully open, he drove his SUV up the uphill road that had trees and red rose bushes on either side of it. Turning a bend, Harte got his first look at the huge Gothic manor house at the top of the hill. From the angle Harte was looking at it from, he saw that the Blackthorn Manor House was a huge L-shaped stone building with a large tower room at its apex. 6 intricately sculptured gargoyles stood watch along the tiled roof. In the distance there was also a large glass-paneled arboretum as well as a stable area. As Harte's vehicle reached the front of the building, the road widened into a large circular driveway with a stone fountain in the middle. In the center of the fountain was a cherub blowing a horn that spouted the water. A woman in a white blouse and black knee-length skirt stood just outside the front door. To either side of her were 2 dark-suited men wearing black glasses. Harte recognized her as Jessica Blackthorn. Harte parked his SUV in front of the driveway, shut it down, and got out. "Dr. Harte, I'm Jessica Blackthorn," the blonde said in a cold monotone. "Dick said you'd be coming for a visit." "Indeed. I need to see Christopher's home environment. It will help me with my evaluation," Harte told her. "That is fine, Doctor," she said, waving him off like it was unimportant. "Please give your keys to Michael here," she said, motioning to the large man in black to her left. "He will park your truck for you." Not wanting to argue with the man looking down at him, he handed over the keys. "Michael will return your car and keys when you decide to leave," she said, turning to the large wooden twin front doors. "And Michael, please park that thing where I don't have to look at it," she said, glancing over her shoulder at Harte's SUV with disgust. "Yes, Mrs. Blackthorn," the man in black said in an equally cold monotone as he passed Harte and headed for his vehicle. "Please follow me," she said, motioning to the doctor with her right hand. "We will have tea in the parlor. I gather you have not had time to eat lunch, so I will ask the kitchen to bring you some cucumber sandwiches." "Thank you, that is very kind of you," Harte said to be polite, The fact was he couldn't stand cucumber sandwiches. He'd gotten stuck having them at a psychiatrist convention in London and never managed to get a taste for them. "Not at all. You are my guest," she said, waving him off as they entered the high-ceilinged great hall. Harte was stunned by the opulence that was before him. Hanging down in the center of the hall was a huge crystal chandelier. There were 2 majestic stairways leading up to the upper level of the manor. Between these curved stairway was a door Harte assumed led to the kitchen. Either that or a huge closet. Near the bottom of the stairway to the right was an open door which led to an impressive long-tabled dining room with another crystal chandelier hanging down over it. A very lovely place for a family dinner, he thought, along with around 20 friends, as well with room to spare. Glancing behind him, Harte saw that on either side of the entry doors were 2 alcoves with a Tiffany vase in each. On the walls behind the vases were Renaissance-style oil paintings of upper-crust people in classical dress of the 1700s. Obviously not ancestors, Harte thought, because he knew for a fact that the late Vincent Blackthorn had come from a poor Virginia family and had built an empire on his own. So all this was just set dressing to give the family home that majestic air. In the center of the great hall, under the chandelier, was a small table with a very large Ming vase sitting on top of it. "I would hate to be the butler trying to keep this thing safe with 4 kids playing around the house," he thought. Though the truth was he doubted Vincent Blackthorn's children got a chance to horseplay around the house anyways. More than likely they were under the harsh observation of nannies that controlled their every move. Harte shook his head. The rich. He guessed Jessica noticed the gesture because she said, "Impressive, don't you think?" "Overwhelming," he said honestly. This brought a subtle indication of a smile to her face. "My mother loved fine art. My father allowed her to decorate the manor as she saw fit," she told him. "I remember when I was young all the parties and the dinners my mother put on. High-profile people from all over the world came here. Things were wonderful then." Then she frowned. Then it all ended. "Why? What happened?" Harte asked. "My brother happened," she said, her face turning stone hard again. "My mother died giving birth to him. He nearly died a few times after he was born. He was so fragile." She looked down at the floor. "With all things given, it would have been better if he had. He was nothing but an albatross around my father's neck until his death. I could not believe my father gave the estate to him." She looked up, and for a second Harte saw a look of pure hatred cross her face. But then it melted back into the stone-hard mask of indifference she wore. "This way to the parlor," she said, gesturing at the closed door near the left side of the stairway. Upon entering, Harte was surprised to see that Dick Hadley and the twins were sitting on the large leather couch near the huge fireplace waiting for them. Janet was on one side of Hadley and Sandra was on the other. Dick was sitting with his arms across their shoulders and smiling at Jessica and the doctor with that same shark-like smile. "So, Ed, did you have a good visit with the big man?" Hadley asked.
"Dick, I didn't see you arrive," Jessica stated.
"The girls paid me a visit at my office, and I brought them home. Also, I wanted to hear how Ed's meeting with Christopher went," Hadley told her.
"Thanks for the ride, Daddy," the twins said in unison. "Stop referring to him in that manner," Jessica raged at them. The ice had melted, and beneath was a lioness complete with claws. Harte wished he hadn't left his notepad in the car. This, along with what he heard in the hall, was important. The twins cringed and pulled away from Dick. They both moved to either end of the couch with fear apparent in their eyes. It was clear they were not prepared for such a strong reaction from their older sister. "You will not disrespect our father in such a way," she continued, her hands clenched into fists on either side of her hips. "Not while I'm alive."
"Sorry," the girls yelled in unison.
"Leave,"
Jessica ordered them, her tone icy again.
"Go play."
"But we wanted to hear about the doc's visit with the stain," Jessica replied.
"I said leave,"
Jessica said, a warning in her tone, and her eyes focused on the girls like spears.
"This is adult talk, and not for the two of you. You would be bored and overly distracted. Go to your room and find some way to entertain yourselves."
The girls got boo-hoo faces, but slowly got up off the couch and headed for the door.
"Bye, Dick,"
Janet said, looking over her shoulder at the lawyer and smiling seductively. Then Sandra did the same before they made their retreat and closed the door behind them. Jessica looked over at Hadley with what could only be described as pouty lips.
"We are going to have a talk about this later,"
she said, glaring at him venomously. Harte shook his head again. "Too much information," his mind screamed. It was obvious that Dick Hadley had had all three of the Blackthorn daughters. Dick was royally living up to his name.
"Doctor, there is something I want to show you unless you have already noticed it," Jessica said, turning to Harte.
This question surprised him. The truth was, he had been so busy focusing on the drama before him, he might have missed something about the room. He tended to get tunnel vision when he got in doctor mode, and he was definitely in that mode at this very minute.
"My father loved his family. He may have been an iron hand, but he truly treasured it. This room in particular was his testimonial to that," Jessica said, gesturing at the walls.
Harte looked around and saw the walls were covered in framed photos and large oil-painted portraits. Above the fireplace was a portrait of a white-haired, bearded Vincent Blackthorn sitting on a thorn-like carved wooden chair with his wife Catherine. standing beside him in a very stylish pink dress with a string of white pearls around her neck. In her arms was a baby, Christopher, Harte concluded, though it did not make sense since Jessica had said that her mother had died in childbirth. Harte could only conclude that Vincent Blackthorn had had a stand-in in place of his wife and had had her painted into the portrait. After all, it was a family portrait, and the head of the household would not accept anything less. Either that, or he'd had his wife's embalmed body dug up and had her posed for the portrait. That might explain why Christopher was so fucked up in the head, he thought. The truth was, he could believe anything of this fucked up family. Also in the portrait, standing in front of their quote-unquote mother, were the three young girls, Jessica, older and blonde, along with her two dark-haired younger siblings with semi-bored expressions on their faces. To the left of the quote-unquote family portrait was another, more recent portrait of Jessica. She was seated and was wearing a black dress and what looked like the same string of pearls her mother had been wearing. Her expression was cold and her eyes were piercing and angry. The artist had captured her exactly. Next to that painting was one of the twins. In their portrait, they were standing together wearing knee-high black dresses with plenty of bust showing. The two of them were holding each other's hands with their heads tilted down slightly and closed-mouthed, red-lipped grins on their faces, almost like they were secretly conspiring. So true to life, Harte thought. But the most interesting of all the family portraits was on the opposite side of the family portrait. The one of Christopher. In his portrait, he was standing in a black suit and tie with a very blank look on his face. What made his portrait of blaring interest was the fact that standing beside Christopher, with its gauntleted, large, sharp, black, nailed hands on his shoulder, was what could only be described as a horned demon. So this is Robert, Harte thought, as he continued to study the portrait. The inhuman thing that Christopher named Robert had grayish skin with glowing red eyes. It had pointed ears and a snout-like nose. Its mouth was full of dagger-like teeth and was pulled back into an evil grin. Around its thick neck was a necklace made of severed and mummified human fingers. Its huge muscular body was only clothed by a dark greenish-colored and stained loincloth that had a large spiked belt wrapped around it. Jessica walked up to Christopher's portrait and looked at it with disgust. My brother paid the artist to add that revolting thing to his portrait. When my father saw this abomination, he went into a rage. He had it stored away in the attic and refused to have a replacement commissioned. It was only after our father died that my brother had the painting brought down and displayed At the objection to my sisters and myself, of course. Jessica shook her head and looked down at the floor. My father had these portraits commissioned out of love for our family, and my brother made a mockery of it. But why would Christopher do such a thing? Harte asked. He was very interested in the answer to this. My brother insisted that that thing was as much a part of the family as any of us. Harte saw a flicker of sadness cross Jessica Blackthorn's face. Her mask had slipped. Honestly, Doctor, Christopher is my brother, but he might as well be a stranger. I have no understanding of how his mind works. I know my sisters like the back of my hand. I'm one of the few people who can control their more frivolous natures, but Christopher is totally alien to me. In many ways I fear him because I can't anticipate him. What happened with the security guard caught me by surprise. She rubbed her temple and shook her head. We need to put Christopher where he is safe and controlled. For the sake of the family, I would rather it not have to be prison. I sincerely doubt my brother could survive there. For the sake of my father's wishes, he requested I take care of Christopher. I would rather see him in a place where he can get the help he needs. She told him, looking down at the floor in a very vulnerable way. Harte wasn't fooled. The truth is that you and your skanky sisters want to put dear brother away so you don't have to deal with him, Harte thought after watching Jessica's performance. He honestly doubted any of these ego-case pieces of filth had any familial feelings towards Christopher at all. He was just something dear Daddy put between them and the family riches. Christopher was the chum for the sharks, and they were coming in for the meal. I would like to have a look at Christopher's room now, if that would be all right with you, Harte asked. But you haven't had your tea or sandwiches, Jessica said with barely any real interest. I would rather get my work done and be out of your hair as soon as possible. I know you must have better things to do, Harte said. As I said, Jessica, I like this guy, Dick Hadley said. Harte had almost forgotten he was still in the room. He had been uncharacteristically quiet. No nonsense. Here to do a job and get it done. Do as you wish, Jessica said, waving him off. I do indeed have better things to do, thanks to my dear brother. With him incarcerated, I'm stuck running our father's business. And you wouldn't have it any other way, Harte thought with amusement. Jessica grabbed up a gold-colored bell with a wooden handle off the side of the table next to the couch and rang it. A heavy-built man in his early 50s, from what Harte could deduce, with graying blonde hair and a dark gray vested suit with a burgundy tie, stepped into the room. He closed the door and stood in front of it in a straight, almost military attention stance. You rang, madam? The man asked in a British accent. Dr. Harte would like to go up to Christopher's room. Could you escort him there, Charles? Jessica asked, though Harte knew It was by no means a request. "It would be my pleasure, Mom," Charles said, bowing his head slightly in a perfectly practiced servant's acknowledgement. Charles opened the door and turned back and motioned for Harte to follow. "This way, sir." "Have fun, Ed," Dick said from the couch. "We'll look forward to your assessment." "I've no doubt you will," Harte thought as he headed out the door and into the great hall. "So Charles, is it?" Harte asked as they started up the tall staircase on the left side of the hall. "Yes, sir," Charles said in a professional manner. "How long have you worked for the Blackthorn family?" Harte asked. "Oh, I've worked for the Blackthorns all my professional life as a gentleman's gentleman. My father was the original head butler. I had started out as the personal chauffeur for Mrs. Blackthorn," Charles told him. "I have no doubt about that," Harte said under his breath. "What was that, sir?" Charles asked. "Oh, nothing," Harte said, waving him off. "Please continue your story." "Well, after my dear dad retired, he recommended me to Mr. Blackthorn, and I became head butler and have been ever since," Charles said with pride. "And no doubt you acquired that position a short time after Jessica was born," Harte thought. "That was the best way to keep an eye on you." Vincent Blackthorn was not an ignorant man. Harte was sure if he could figure this out, so could Vincent. It was clear as day. It was obvious that Charles had been diddling the missus, and that Jessica, the only blonde child, was his. It was no wonder Vincent Blackthorn left his riches to Christopher. He wasn't going to will everything he worked to build to his wife's illegitimate daughter, the offspring of the hired help. Also, he would definitely not give a cent to the Twitty twins. That would be a waste of good money. So the only choice left to him had been poor, weak little Christopher. He wasn't by any stretch of the word the best choice, but at least Vincent was sure he was blood. As they reached the top of the stairs, Harte heard the sound of someone yelling. When they turned to head down the hall, Harte saw who the source was. It was one of the twins. He thought it might be Sandra because she was the slightly chunkier of the two. She was yelling at a young Latino girl who was wearing a very traditional maid's uniform. "I don't give a fuck about what your religion dictates. When you're on Facebook posting, you're supposed to be me. None of this shit sounds like me," Sandra said, holding a bunch of pictures in the cringing maid's face. "I'm Sandra Blackthorn. I'm fucking fabulous. This isn't fucking fabulous. This sounds like a weak-kneed virgin. It's complete shit. Do I look like a weak-kneed virgin?" "No, miss. I'm sorry, miss. I was doing the best I could. I'm sorry," the maid said in a soft and fearful voice. She was bent over slightly with her hands up. Honestly, she looked like she was afraid of being slapped. Harte thought for a moment of interceding, but then thought better of it. His interest was Christopher, not how the family treats its staff.
Do better, or I'll find someone else to do it. Then you could easily find your ass sent back to Mexico. Then you can find a job at some barrio hump me good sailor bar to feed those brats of yours. Am I clear? Sandra said, giving her prey a very evil smile.
Yes, miss. I'll do better. I'll be fucking fabulous, I promise you,
the maid said, tears running down her face.
Good,
Sandra said. Then she noticed Harte and Charles's presence and turned and smiled at the doctor.
Hi, Doc. Enjoying your visit?
Very insightful, I have to say, Harte said, returning the smile.
You off to check out the Staines' bedroom? Have fun,
she said, before going back to torturing the maid. All through this, Charles was silent and totally unfazed by the incident they had just walked past. The perfect gentleman's gentleman, Harte thought, shaking his head. The masters of the house could do whatever they wanted, and he wouldn't lift an eyebrow. Harte followed Charles down the hall that was decorated with lighted sconces that looked like candles and had oil paintings of various landscapes between every other doorway. Finally, they reached the door to Christopher's room. Charles pulled a key ring loaded with keys out of his coat pocket and opened the heavy wooden door. Harte walked inside. The room was stuffy, possibly because no one had been in it for nearly a month and a half. His first impression upon glancing around was that the room was amazingly Spartan, and not just because of the absence of the bed or the chess table. A rather plain-looking dresser was sitting along the wall to his right, next to a closed door that could either be a closet or a bathroom. On the opposite wall was a very large bookcase literally loaded to the ceiling with books. The walls were bare of any decoration. There wasn't even a computer in sight. Harte was surprised. Who the hell doesn't have a computer in this day and age? He thought.
I'll leave you to it, sir, Charles told him from the doorway. If you need anything, just use the intercom next to the door. Also, please let me know when you're leaving so I can lock things up again. Mr. Christopher likes his room locked at all times.
No problem, thanks, Charles, Harte said.
My pleasure, sir,
Charles said before closing the door. Harte heard the soft clink of the lock as Charles locked the door behind him. Well, since I'm not going anywhere, Harte thought as he headed over to the window at the side of the room next to where it appeared the bed had once sat, and opened it. Fresh air, he said aloud to himself, enjoying the soft breeze that issued from the window. Well, let's see who I'm dealing with, he thought as he walked over to the bookcase that encompassed the left wall of the room. Christopher had everything from hardbound classics like Moby Dick to the latest Alex Cross novel. He also had books on space, history, science, business, even art. Christopher was an extremely well-read individual. Obsessively well-read was a better way to put it, he thought. Next, the doctor headed over to the door next to the dresser and found it was indeed a closet. To his surprise, he found 7 duplicate dark gray sport coat and slack ensembles hanging on coat hangers beside an equal number of white button-down shirts. The only odd outfit in the closet was the black suit Harte recognized from Christopher's portrait. Also on the floor, under the clothes, were 4 pairs of duplicate brown loafers. It seemed logical to Harte. From what he'd seen, it appeared Christopher was more a thinker who lived a very solitary life than fashion divas like his sisters. Amusingly, he had no doubt he would find out Christopher had studied Einstein. The whole duplicate clothes thing was a dead giveaway. The last thing Harte did was check out the dresser. As he had already surmised, he didn't find any porno magazines or anything but plain undershirts, underwear, and socks, along with some very basic grooming items and handkerchiefs. It seemed that sex was something our young Mr. Blackthorn had little or no interest. Of course, living with those shrews he called sisters would turn a guy off women, Harte thought. Though he also doubted Christopher had any interest in men either. He just got that non-sexual impression from him. No sex symbol there, Harte thought with a smile. Harte had seen enough. He headed over to the intercom and hit the button. The intercom was a metal box with a white button on it with the word "talk" on it. Next to the button was a large old-fashioned cloth-sewn speaker. The thing looked like it came out of the 40s or 50s. "Charles?" Harte asked, speaking into the speaker after pressing the button. "Yes, sir," came the crackling monotone reply out of the speaker a few moments later. "You can come and let me out of here. I've seen what I need to see," Harte told him. "As you wish, sir," came the reply. "Also tell Miss Blackthorn I will take the job," Harte said with a smile on his face. "That will be my pleasure, sir," Charles said. "No, the pleasure is mine," Harte thought. This was the case he had been waiting for his entire career. August 15th, 2013, 10:27 a.m., Hawthorne County Jail, Session 1. Harte was surprised to see a silver platter with a flower-patterned tea set and a plate of French pastries waiting for him on top of the chess table when he entered Christopher Blackthorn's cell. "Good morning, Doctor," Christopher said pleasantly. "Robert and I thought you might like some Earl Grey and pastries while we talked this morning. I'm very much with you in regard to cucumber sandwiches. I can't stand the things. They are the indulgence of the egotistical upper class.
The truth is, none of them like the damn things either, but they won't admit it. It would be going against the social standard. That is a very interesting trick you do there, Harte said. What trick is that? Christopher asked innocently. You know, the whole cucumber sandwich thing. The last time we talked, you kept mentioning details about my visit to Dick Hadley's office. That trick. I thought I'd made myself clear, Christopher said. Robert keeps me informed. We both enjoy keeping an eye on the members of the household. It's very entertaining. So you're still saying that your friend Robert is giving you all this information, Harte said, trying to avoid appearing skeptical. Yes, who else would it be? Christopher answered. He also reads minds. He loves to read minds. He says even the nicest people you can meet, who is God-fearing and goes to church regularly, have minds that are full of thoughts they would never dare to admit, even to themselves. May I record our session? Harte asked, pulling a digital recorder out of his pocket. He had made sure that Dick made it clear to the administrator and the staff that Harte was allowed this one concession. Robert and I would not have it any other way. I believe Jessica and Dick will find it very entertaining when they listen to it, Christopher said with a light chuckle. This is just for me so I can get things accurate when I write up my report, Harte told him. Then please proceed, Doctor, Christopher said, giving him an amused smile. With satisfaction, Harte pushed the button on his recorder. This will definitely make his job that much easier. Please come over and have a seat. You are our guest after all, Christopher said, motioning to the seat across from him. I thought that's Robert's seat, Harte said. Robert says you can have it while you're here, Christopher told him. That's very courteous of Robert. I would not expect such courtesy from a demon, Harte admitted. Robert is not a stereotypical demon, Christopher said with a smile as he poured Harte a cup of tea. Robert said he'll sit on the floor over here. Christopher pointed to a spot on the floor in front of the table, but between the two of them, and be entertained by your interrogation. I'm not interrogating you, Harte told them. I just want to get to know you and Robert a bit better. It will make it so much easier when I go before the judge with my evaluation. Are you really sure about that, Doctor? Christopher asked. You saw the portrait of me and Robert. Is Robert truly something you want to know? You seem to have no problem with him, Harte pointed out. I've known Robert for a long time, Christopher said as he dropped 2 sugars into Harte's tea and poured a little cream into it. How did you know I like my tea this way? Harte asked. The same way I know you don't like your coffee black, like you had it at Dick's office. Robert, Harte answered for him. Yes. He also told me you prefer raspberry pastries with powdered sugar on them, Christopher said, lifting the plate and holding it out to him. Please don't be shy, Doctor. I'm not really a pastry person myself. If I crave something sweet, I usually treat myself to a piece of dark chocolate. Otherwise, I avoid them." "And what about Robert?" Harte asked, taking a pastry. "Would he like one?" "Robert doesn't have a sweet tooth. His hungers run in a different direction. He gains nourishment from the pain and negative emotions of others. For him, suffering and hatred is his French pastry." "Really?" Harte said before taking a bite of the pastry. It was definitely fresh and very tasty. "Yes, indeed. He has a fine meal feeding on all the corruption that infects my family," Christopher informed him. "It's very satisfying for him." Harte had no doubt he would if he was in fact real, given what he observed during his visit the other day. The word dysfunctional does not fully describe the Blackthorn family. "Robert says you still doubt he exists," Christopher said to his surprise. "He read your thoughts just now." How the hell could he know I was thinking that? He asked himself. All he could conclude was Christopher was unusually perceptive and was reading his body language and facial responses. That could be the only explanation. "Well, if he would make himself visible to me, then I couldn't doubt it," Harte pointed out. "You're not ready yet, Doctor. Maybe once you have learned more about him, he might. But just right now I sincerely doubt your sanity could handle it," Christopher told him. "Fine, we'll play it your way," Harte thought. "Then tell me about Robert. How did you two meet?" "Now that is an amusing story," Christopher said before he started telling the tale. April 10th, 2000, around 3 p.m., Blackthorn Estate, somewhere around the wooded area. 11-year-old Christopher Blackthorn was hiding in a large clump of bushes. He was supposed to be playing hide-and-seek, but in truth, it was much more serious than that. The kid he was hiding from, Joshua Jowski, the son of one of the servants, had made the rules for the game, and if he found Christopher, he would take great pleasure in kicking him in the balls 5 times. Those were the games Joshua loved to play, and he would get away with it because, after all, Christopher's dad was paying him to play with his son. Christopher tried to calm his breath as best as he could. Joshua had only given him a 5 count, and it had been a long run to the woods with his opponent in hot pursuit. He had managed to elude his pursuer and found a brief respite in this meager hiding place. "I'm gonna find you, rich boy," Joshua screamed with overconfidence in the distance. "Your balls are mine." "I don't think so this time," Christopher thought with amusement. This had not been the first time Christopher had played one of Joshua's games. The truth was that Christopher had gotten really good at evading him, which is the reason why Joshua had upped the stakes to the level they currently were.
Christopher had to admit he kinda enjoyed making a fool out of Joshua, who was 3 years older and a lot bigger and stronger than him. If it meant he had to suffer a little pain once in a while, so be it.
You hear me, rich boy?
Joshua said. He sounded a lot closer than before, uncomfortably close.
You might as well step out of your hiding place and get this over with. I can smell your fear.
I don't smell any fear. Christopher heard a low, deep-sounding voice say to the left, next to the tree. He looked over and was completely floored by what he saw. Leaning against a tree, with its gauntleted and clawed arms crossed across its chest, was a gray-skinned, 8-foot-tall horned demon. If anything, I don't smell much from you. You seem unusually calm for a human. The demon continued.
Why would I be scared?
Christopher asked in a near whisper in case Josh was near.
I've played this scenario with him several times and I know the eventual outcome. He will find me and get his jollies off hurting me. Then he'll get rewarded later by my father who will pay him for abusing me.
I've seen, the demon said. It's become banal. He has no imagination. He thinks he is showing himself as the better of the two of you, when in fact he is actually showing himself as the weaker of the two of you. It's gotten to the point that you don't even allow him the satisfaction of enjoying your pain, because to you, at this point, the pain doesn't matter.
True, Christopher said. The pain is the least interesting part of it. In fact, it is really boring to me. A few times I've had to stop myself from yawning while he has been beating on me.
Well, I need to tell you that your lack of response to him has prodded him into planning to hurt you more than kicking you in the balls. He plans to really hurt you to show you who's boss. The very thought of doing it is filling him with pleasure, the demon said with what almost seemed as concern in its tone.
Really?
Christopher said.
Is that why you decided to show yourself to me, because you wanted to warn me?
Partially, the demon said. My real motivation was that I would like to get involved and make that little bastard know some exquisite pain. I would find it very entertaining, and this situation has become boring in the extreme. Unfortunately, hell has its rules, and I can't intercede unless I'm invited to do so.
So you need my permission?
Christopher got out before he felt two strong hands clasp on his shoulders, and he was dragged through the bushes. A thick, broken branch with a sharp edge cut him across his right cheek. Blood dribbled from the wound and slid down.
I win, rich boy,
Joshua Jowski bellowed with excitement.
I always win.
Then the bully let go and walked around the front of him.
Beg for mercy, wimp,
Jowski ordered.
Now why would I do that?
Christopher asked defiantly. Jowski slapped him across the face as hard as he could, leaving a red throbbing hand mark across Christopher's face. Christopher could tell it was as uncomfortable for Jowski as well, because he was flexing his hand and cringing in pain. Christopher looked up at Jowski again.
You hit like a girl. My sister can do better than that.
Hearing that, Jowski kicked Christopher in the chest. The impact sent him crashing to the ground and knocking the air from his lungs. "You want my help now?" the demon asked matter-of-factly.
Yes,
Christopher managed to get out. "My pleasure," the demon said. What happened the next moment happened in a flash. One moment Jowski was standing over him, looking down at him with a smirk on his face. The next he was 9 foot in the air, screaming in pain because the demon was holding him up by his groin. Then Jowski, his face now tomato red and his eyes bugging out, looked down at the demon, and Christopher swore his scream went up 2 octaves. It sounded like a girl's scream. Had the demon showed itself to him? Christopher wasn't sure. All he knew was it felt good to see that bully get what he deserved. The demon tossed Jowski, and he hit a tree 10 feet away. He slid down to the ground and sat there in a near sitting position at the foot of the tree, completely dazed. The demon let out a thunderous roar and started charging at him. This woke Jowski up completely, and he let out another high-pitched scream and took off running. The demon stopped, and his roar turned into hysterical laughter. "That was victorious!" the demon bellowed. "I swear if I hadn't had that little prick's dick grasp in my hand, he would have pissed himself."
I'm sure he would,
Christopher said with effort. He could hardly breathe. He had been kicked in the ribs by a guy wearing steel-toed boots. He was pretty sure Jowski had broken a couple of his ribs. The demon came over to him and looked down at him. "I like your spunk, but you should have called me earlier. This was a waste of good suffering." Then the demon bent down and held his claw over Christopher's chest. "I usually don't do this because it is not what I do. But in your case, I'll make an exception." Suddenly the demon's claw started to glow, and a tendril of energy danced over Christopher's body. Immediately the pain in Christopher's chest and all over his body started to wane and disappear. "There we are," the demon said. "As good as new."
Thanks,
Christopher said as the demon helped him up to his feet. Christopher felt his cheek. Even the blood was gone. It was like he had never been cut. "Just don't tell anyone I did this," the demon warned him. "My kind are not by nature healers, and it would be looked down upon if my peers were to find out I did such a thing." "But you just told me," Harte reminded Christopher.
Robert gave me permission,
Christopher told him. "Really?" Harte said. "Why would he do that?"
"Well, you said you wanted to get to know him, and the truth is, Robert finds you intriguing," Christopher said. "He doesn't say that about everyone."
Well, I guess I'll have to take that as a compliment, Harte said with a smile.
Robert says you can take it any way you want, Christopher told him.
So what happened to Joshua Jowski? Harte asked.
Oh, him? Christopher said in a dismissive manner. He ran back to the house. He was never the same again. His hair had turned white, and all he could do is mumble about the horrible thing he saw. It seemed that meeting Robert unhinged his mind. I have to say, it couldn't have happened to a better brat. From what I gather, he has his own room at the Hawthorne Medical Institute. Robert says he still mumbles the same thing over and over. He finds it funny as hell.
Why did you name your demon friend Robert? Harte inquired.
I didn't name him Robert. That was the name he told me to call him, since I wouldn't be able to pronounce his real name. Also, there was something about how knowing a demon's true name would give you power over that demon.
Okay, understood, but why Robert? Why not something more casual like, say, Bob? Harte asked.
Okay, calm down, Robert, Christopher said, holding his hand up like he was holding something back. He doesn't know. I'll tell him. Don't take offense.
What is it? Harte said, surprised.
Don't ever say that name in front of Robert. In his language, it is an unforgivable insult. That security guard called Robert that name, and that was why Robert twisted his head, Christopher warned.
I'll remember that, Harte promised.
Please do, Christopher told him. I would hate to see you on the floor with your head twisted off. I'm actually starting to like you, Doctor. I don't say that about a lot of people.
Indeed, who else has earned this rare honor? Harte asked.
Well, besides our dear friend Gomez, there was my old nanny, Nanny Hersberg, Christopher admitted.
Yes, I could see that. After all, she pretty much raised you, Harte concluded.
There was no pretty much about it. Nanny Hersberg did indeed raise me and my sisters after my mother died, Christopher told them. Amusingly enough, my father had her stand in for my mother for that family portrait of his. Robert told me that Jessica had made it clear that it was my fault that Mother died. It gives her great pleasure reminding me of that fact.
This last part, Christopher showed a twinge of anger in his tone. So what happened to Nanny Hersberg? Harte asked, partially out of curiosity, partially to change the subject.
Oh, according to Robert, it was an unfortunate accident, Christopher said, sounding apologetic.
What do you mean an unfortunate accident? Harte asked, intrigued.
Well, Robert was caught off guard, Christopher told him. He hadn't expected anyone to come in my room at that time and made himself visible. Nanny burst in and saw him.
Really?
Harte said. Yes, Christopher assured him.
What did she do? Did she react like Jowski? Harte asked.
No, not at all, Christopher told him. According to Robert, he seemed more surprised than she was.
He said she looked straight at him and shook her head. Then she calmly walked out of the room and closed the door. Robert was completely stunned. And what happened after this? Harte pushed. Well, from what I gather, she went to her room, packed her bags, and left a resignation letter before leaving, Christopher told him. When did this happen? Harte asked. I believe I was 17 at the time. I recall my father was very happy because since she resigned, he didn't have to give her any severance, and it saved him having to fire her in another year since we all had outgrown her, Christopher admitted. Do you know what happened to Nanny Herzberg? Harte asked. According to Robert, she is living in Austin, Texas, working as a bartender, Christopher said, giving a soft chuckle. Robert wouldn't happen to have any contact information on her, Harte said, half joking. He'd love to interview that former nanny and get the truth. I think Robert can dig something up, came the surprising reply from Christopher. August 15th, 2013, 3:30 p.m., the office of Dr. Edmund Harte. Harte put the receiver of his phone up to his ear and looked around his rather plain office, waiting for someone on the other end of the phone to answer. Seriously, after spending time at Dick Hadley's office and the Blackthorn estate, his simple office seemed rather cramped and plain. The walls were painted in a light tan. To his left from his seat sat his medium-sized oak desk, and on the wall was his framed diplomas and degrees he had gotten in school. On the opposite side were a couple rather plain metal filing cabinets. Displayed on the wall above the cabinets was his only attempt at decoration. It was a large framed poster of a sunflower that was painted by Vincent van Gogh. Suddenly the ringing from the phone stopped, and he heard a click, and a female voice said, "Hello?" "Hello," Harte replied. "Is this Miss Herzberg, the former nanny of the Blackthorn estate?" "Who's asking, and how did you get this number?" came the curt reply. "My name is Dr. Edmund Harte. I'm a psychiatrist working on the Blackthorn murder case," Harte replied. "You didn't answer how you got this number," the voice on the phone replied back. Harte was reluctant to give his source. "I got it from the Blackthorns." "I knew they were keeping an eye on me. Once you're in, you're never truly out," the voice said. "Who did you say you were?" "I'm Edmund Harte. I'm the psychiatrist working on the Christopher Blackthorn case," Harte said. "Why are you calling me, doctor?" The person who pretty much confirmed herself to be the former Nanny Herzberg replied.
I haven't been associated with the Blackthorn family for years.
You had been the nanny for Christopher Blackthorn for over 17 years. You raised him. Who better to ask about him?
I was actually the nanny for all the Blackthorn children. But indeed my focus was on Christopher,
Nanny Herzberg told him. So, tell me a bit about Christopher. What kind of a child was he? Harte asked.
He was an odd one. He was extremely antisocial. He always wanted to play by himself. He really didn't want anything to do with his sisters, and from what I could tell, they didn't either, especially Jessica. I could tell she had a firm resentment for him due to the fact that her mother died giving birth to him. I wasn't much of a replacement either. I was 23 when I was hired and stuck with 3 traumatized girls and a newborn baby.
It sounds to me like you had your hands full, Harte commented.
As they grew, the children seemed to grow apart. Jessica became cold and associated with her father more than her siblings. The twins became more rebellious and drew more and more shallow and focused more on themselves and their social lives. Christopher became more and more introverted.
She let out a frustrated sigh.
From the moment he started to learn to read, he dove into books. He had pretty much taught himself to read by the age of 5. His hunger for knowledge was unquenchable. He read everything he could get his hands on. I tried to get him in more physical pursuits, but in the end the only thing that struck any interest with him was chess. I was the one who found him the chess table he has in his room,
Nanny Herzberg told him.
I'm sure you saw it.
Yes, I did, Harte confirmed. So Christopher wanted nothing to do with other children, even his own sisters.
Especially his sisters,
the nanny confirmed.
His father got so frustrated with the situation, he actually started paying the children of some of the staff to play with him. That didn't work out so well.
Are you talking about what happened to Joshua Jowski? Christopher told me a little, Harte told her.
That was a tragedy, and we were never able to find out what happened. Vincent had sent Joshua out to play with Christopher as usual, and 2 hours later Joshua came back to the house mumbling something about a monster. What happened to that child had to be horrendous because his hair had turned white.
So Christopher hadn't made that part up, Harte thought to himself.
That poor boy had had a complete mental break,
Nanny Herzberg continued.
Vincent had the estate searched, but nothing unusual turned up. He felt so responsible that he paid to have that poor child taken to the Hawthorne Institute to be cared for. It was after this that Christopher started talking about this invisible friend of his.
What can you tell me about Christopher's relationship with Robert? Harte asked.
All I can say is that after that day, it was Robert this and Robert that. Christopher would sit in his room having conversations with that thing. Oh, and goodness, when his father had all the children pose for individual portraits, Christopher had the artist put that thing in the portrait with him. It was hideous. His father went into a rage and had the damn portrait locked away.
I saw it, Harte informed her. Christopher had it brought down from the attic and displayed after his father died.
Good Lord,
the nanny said.
Christopher told me you resigned your position very suddenly without explanation. Could you tell me the reason? After all, you had been in that job for 17 years, Harte asked. I will take my reason for leaving that household to my grave, Nanny Herzberg said. But I will give you some advice, Doctor. I don't care how much money they've offered you or how famous you think this case will make you. I'm telling you now to leave. The devil walks the halls of that house. Nothing good comes to those associated with the Blackthorns. I escaped, and not a moment too soon. If you value your own soul, you will listen to me. Now I must let you go. I've got 2 bottles of vodka to keep me warm this afternoon, and to help block the memories.
Wait, I have more questions, Harte started to say, but he heard a click and the buzzing of a dead connection. Damn, he said. It was at that moment the intercom on his desk buzzed. What is it, Jennifer? He asked after pressing the button for two-way communication.
There's a lady out here who is interested in seeing you, his receptionist said.
Did she give a name? He asked.
No, I think you'll want to see this, Jennifer replied.
Okay, let her come in, he said, intrigued. Usually Jennifer was not so cryptic, which meant it was really out of the ordinary. The door opened, and to his surprise, it was one of the Blackthorn twins. From the look of her, he concluded it must be Janet. She was wearing a flowing red dress with matching long sleeves that went up to her elbows. She also wore a matching large brim hat. Around her neck was a ridiculously large necklace made of onyx. In her left hand she held a very uncomfortable-looking tan Pekingese dog.
Hi, Doc,
Janet said, giving him a seductive smile with her fire-engine red lips. Miss Blackthorn, what is the pleasure of this visit? Harte asked.
Oh, I was out and about, and I thought I'd come over and say hi,
she replied, winking at him. Where's your sister? I thought you two were inseparable, he asked.
Oh, Sandra is out shopping. I told her we'd meet later and get sonkered, she said.
How did you find out the address of my office? Harte wanted to know.
Dick gave it to me, Janet told them. Sandra and I had lunch with him, and I happened to mention I wanted to check in on you, and he happily gave me your address. Honestly, Doc, you need to remodel that reception room. It looks like a dentist's office, and I hate my dentist. Also, you need to get rid of that fat girl you have for a receptionist. She is just gross. I share the office with another psychiatrist, so any alterations to the staff and decor must be a mutual decision, Harte informed her. Well, I'll get my designer Jean-Claude down here with some designs and he'll convince him, she said. Actually, it is a her, and we are both quite happy with the Spartan look of the reception hall. And Jennifer has been with us for years, and what she doesn't have in looks, she has in skills, Harte made clear. Have it your way, Doc, she said, sleeking up uncomfortably close, like a snake going after its dinner. Are you, by the way, married, Doc? I'm divorced, he admitted. That's just too bad. I like you, Doc. I like you a lot, she said, smiling at him and giving him the kiss-me stare. You're just so forceful and manly, it's sexy. Then she grabbed Harte in the crotch and licked him on the cheek seductively. Thankfully, it was at that moment Janet's foo-foo dog growled and snapped at him. Harte immediately stepped back. Thank God, he thought with relief. Lucky break. Oh, now you stop that right now, Agnes, she told the dog. The doc is our friend. Janet looked up and smiled at Harte again. I apologize for Agnes here. She is very protective of her mommy, she said. Then she started talking baby talk to the Pekingese. Aren't you protective, my little bitchy, 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 bitchy? The dog snorted at her and Janet started to laugh. So is this the reason you came to see me? Was to say hi and introduce me to your dog? Harte said. He didn't have time for all this foolishness. He had a job to do and he had a lot of work to finish before he left for the day. Honestly, I was curious about what you found out about the stain. I wanted to see if you found out enough to prove he's a nutcase, she told him. I'm still collating the data, and I have a couple more sessions with him before I can come to a conclusion, he told her. I'm telling you, Doc, the best place for him is to be locked away in a hospital where he can do no more damage, she said. Really, when it comes down to it, I could care less if he was actually thrown in jail. Both me and Sandra would get a big laugh if he ended up some muscle guy's bitch. That's all he is a weak little bitch anyways. Why do you and your sister call him the Stain? Harte asked. Just look at him, Doc, she said with anger and revulsion. He is a stain on our family. Look at me, look at my sisters. We're fucking fabulous. Even Jessica in her cold, controlling way. Christopher is weak, has no dress sense, and is just plain disgusting to look at. From the moment he flopped out of our mother's cunt, he has been nothing but a burden on all of us. He needs to be put away and forgotten. Harte was surprised to see a single tear issue from Janet's heavily mascaraed eye. Janet took one of her red-gloved hands and wiped the tear off her cheek. Now, if you'll excuse me, Doc, I think it's time to leave. I thought this was going to be fun, but it isn't fun, she told him.
Where are you off to now? Harte asked, though he wasn't really interested. He was just happy she was leaving.
Oh, I think I'll go to the club and see my old friend Jack Daniels. Sandra can catch up with me when she gets there.
Then she turned and headed for the door. As she opened it, she looked over her shoulder and smiled and winked at him.
See you around, Doc. We'll have to finish our business another time.
With that, she blew him a kiss and closed the door behind her. Harte shook his head. I'd rather kiss that rat you call a dog. Then he let out a sigh. He wasn't really sure if it was with relief or frustration. He felt a bit of both. As a doctor, he felt sorry for Christopher. It was no wonder he went inward and created an imaginary support system in Robert. It seemed all the dysfunctional people in his life, meaning his family, had decided to throw the entire disintegration of the family on him. For a person who is pretty much a recluse, such pressure could be devastating to his fragile psyche. He was literally a time bomb ready to go off. Unfortunately, the person he ended up going off on was that security guard. He headed over to his desk and hit the intercom. Jennifer, hold my calls until I say otherwise, and no more visitors. I don't care if it's Miley Cyrus or the Pope. I don't want to be disturbed. Is that clear?
Crystal,
Jennifer's voice from the intercom said. Good, he said, and went back to his desk to transcribe and think about everything he had heard the last hour. Tomorrow was going to be an important day. Tomorrow he was going to bore into Christopher's head like a coconut and reveal the milky white interior of his mind and meet the true Christopher Blackthorn. It would be that or nothing. Harte smiled at his reflection on the screen of his laptop that was sitting on his desk. He was ready. August 16th, 2013, 9:57 a.m., Hawthorne County Jail, Session 2. Gomez led Harte into Christopher's cell. As he had expected, Christopher was waiting for him with a pot of tea and French pastries like before.
Good morning, Doctor, Christopher said from his usual seat. We are excited about today's talk. So you want to get in my head and learn about who I truly am. I'm ready to reveal myself.
I'm glad you're enthusiastic, Harte said as he sat down in Robert's seat. And how is Robert today?
Robert is amused today. We had a fun evening last night talking about Janet's unexpected visit to your office. I have to say I was very impressed with the fact that you managed to get away from her advances. You really don't want to mess with either one of those twits. You might get something, Christopher said with an indication of amusement in his tone. Those two will open their legs for anyone wearing pants, be they male or female.
Harte shook his head. He was still surprised by that trick Christopher did, but he knew logically that it could only be a trick. It could be that he was paying off Gomez to keep an eye on him after he left. He knew it sounded paranoid, but it was the only answer next to the idea he was being followed around by a gray-horned demon named Robert.
So skeptical, Doctor,
Christopher said, tilting his head and looking at the doctor with amusement.
It was in Shakespeare's Hamlet that Hamlet told Horatio, "There is more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." That is a truth you should embrace, Doctor. I have.
I don't have the luxury of believing in things that can't be proven, Harte said. Unless Robert is willing to lift this tray, he pointed at the silver tray that held the tea set and pastries, I must remain skeptical.
In time, Doctor. In time, Robert will present himself to you, Christopher told him. So for now, you must remain skeptical, unfortunately.
Then Christopher lifted the teapot.
Tea?
No, I'd rather we get started, Harte said, waving the offer off.
Robert said you were going to be strictly business today,
Christopher said, setting the pot back on the tray. He did, Harte said, taking his digital voice recorder out of the pocket of his tan sport coat and turning it on. He placed it on the tray next to the French pastries. This is session 2 with subject Christopher Blackthorn, August 16th. He looked at his watch. 10:13 a.m.
You forgot to mention Robert, Christopher told him. He's participating too.
All right. Along with us is Christopher's invisible friend Robert, Harte added. By the way, does Robert have a last name? Harte was intrigued to know what Christopher's answer was going to be. Christopher bent over to the side where supposedly Robert was sitting and whispered into the thin air. Then he nodded his head and looked over at the doctor.
Robert says he has no problem telling you his last name. It's Diablo.
I could have guessed, Harte thought, smiling and shaking his head with amusement. His last name is Spanish for devil.
Yes, though Robert is not making any claims that he is Memnoch. No, Robert is in fact a simple torture demon, like a worker bee in a beehive, Christopher told him.
Well, if he's such a low-grade demon, why is he here? Harte asked.
Calm yourself, Robert,
Christopher cautioned his invisible friend.
The doctor was simply asking a question, not making a judgment on you.
What's wrong? Harte asked.
Oh, Robert was slightly incensed by you calling him a low-grade demon. He is well respected in the torture pits and has worked long and hard ripping human souls apart and putting them back together to earn his rank. It is a matter of pride,
Christopher informed him. I apologize, Harte said, though he felt ridiculous apologizing to something he couldn't see.
Actually, it was my fault. I misrepresented Robert's position,
Christopher told him.
My apology to both of you.
Still, if he's a torture demon, why is he on Earth hanging out with you? Harte asked. Good question, he thought to himself.
Once in a while, demons are sent to Earth when a particular soul with potential is detected,
Christopher said. So he is hanging around here because he thinks you have potential. Potential in what? Harte was intrigued. Now it was becoming apparent that Christopher's delusion had a goal other than providing Christopher with a psychological help and the companionship he had been deprived of. This goal was critical to his evaluation. It was also very disturbing.
Eventually, Robert will take me down to hell with him, and he will mentor me in the craft of torturing souls,
Christopher told him.
He says he sees in my heart the true fire of a demon.
Christopher said the last with pride. So was it that inner fire inside you that helped you twist that guard's head off? Harte asked.
I told you it wasn't me. It was an accident.
Christopher corrected him.
He got Robert angry and he took action. I tried to stop him, but Robert was too fast. I warned that guard, but he wouldn't listen. He kept harassing Robert.
Unfortunately, I can't accept that answer. Remember, I need proof, Harte pointed out. As long as Robert refuses to prove himself, I can't believe in him.
As I said, Doctor, you're not ready,
Christopher said.
Robert is a bit of a tough pill to swallow.
Then maybe I need to encourage him, Harte said. This was going to be the make or break moment, and Harte knew it. He had an opportunity to break Christopher out of his delusion. The truth was, this would either free Christopher or cause him to pull deeper inside of himself. But he had to take the chance. Come on, Robert, Harte yelled at the space where Robert was supposed to be. I'm tired of all this game playing. Show yourself.
Doctor, I wouldn't do that. Robert doesn't like when people try to order him around,
Christopher warned. Well, that is just too bad. I'm tired of this crap, Harte pushed. Come on, Robert. Show me what you can do. Either put up or shut up.
Doctor, please don't do this,
Christopher said, clearly upset.
I like you, Doctor. I really do. Robert sensed that you weren't like the others. You actually cared. Please stop, I beg you.
You're right, Christopher. I do care. And I will prove that Robert is only in your mind. Come on, Robert, show yourself. Come on, Bob. I'm daring you. What's wrong, Bob? Are you a pussy? Harte yelled.
Oh my God, no,
Christopher said in a low, defeated tone. Harte was surprised to see a single tear run down his cheek. But then Harte felt something different. The room started to get a heavy feeling, and he could smell something in the air that reminded him of the smell of ash and rotten eggs. Then he felt a hot breeze against his back, and a cold chill went up him. Was it a breeze or a breath? His mind asked him. No, it couldn't be, he told himself. That was impossible. Christopher looked at him with a sad expression on his face and shook his head.
I warned you,
he said. Slowly, Harte turned. It can't be, his mind screamed. It can't be. The artist didn't quite capture him, he thought when he faced the monstrosity before him. Robert was a lot bigger and way more ferocious looking in person. The creature that called itself Robert licked its forked tongue over the razor-sharp daggers it called teeth, leaving a scarlet trail of blood over the top of them. Its inferno-like, glowing eyes bore into the doctor like knives tearing into flesh. Harte could almost say its glare dug into his very soul, if he believed in one. Well, you'll find out if you have one soon enough, he told himself. Harte felt the crotch of his jeans become wet and felt warm urine trickle down his leg. What a way to die, he thought. He wanted to scream and run away, but he had no voice and was completely petrified. The creature lifted its talon-like claws and put them on either side of Harte's head. There was a quick jerk, and suddenly he was facing Christopher again. His body was completely numb, and he fell forward onto the table, knocking the tea set and pastries onto the floor. Then he rolled off and fell onto his back, or front, he should say, because he realized that Robert had twisted his head around and his head was looking up. Robert walked up to him and looked down on him and shook its head. Then Christopher appeared on the opposite side, looked down at him and said, I'm sorry, Doctor, but you disrespected Robert. That is just not acceptable. Slowly the image before Dr. Edmund Harte's eyes slowly faded away, and darkness engulfed him. November 20th, 2013, 1:15 p.m., the Hawthorne Institute Psychiatric Department.
This way, Doctor.
Attendant Juan Gomez told Dr. Darren Young. It seemed Gomez was new to Hawthorne, just like Young, who had been transferred from his position in the psychiatric ward at Cunningham County General Hospital at the request of the Blackthorn family to take on Christopher Blackthorn as his exclusive patient. Supposedly, Gomez had been transferred from the Hawthorne jail to care for Christopher as well. The rich, they get what they want, Young thought. The sad truth is the best thing you can do is just bend over and take it in the ass as far as they're concerned. Well, that and the pay was nothing to laugh at. On top of that, he figured there might be a book to be written on this nutcase, which wasn't so bad either. So really, it was a win-win, and Young liked the sound of that.
Here we are, Doc,
Gomez said as they stopped in front of the mahogany door with the number 46 carved into it.
Now, I know you prefer to be alone during your sessions with him, but I'm under orders not to allow that. Honestly, I prefer not to have to mop up another doctor off the floor.
Young knew exactly what Gomez was talking about. He'd read the file and even listened to Doctor Harte's final session tape. Such a waste, he thought, thinking about Dr. Harte. Such a fine man and such an outstanding psychiatrist he had been. You don't have to worry, Gomez. I'm not looking to get my head twisted off, Young said.
Good, because I prefer you didn't,
Gomez said as he pulled the key out of his pocket and unlocked the door.
I'll be standing with my hand on the doorknob the entire time. If you feel in any danger, I suggest you tell me immediately so I can get us both out of there without incident.
No problem, Young said. He could understand Gomez's paranoia. After all, he had been on duty when Dr. Harte had been killed, and had been in fact outside the door when it happened. Gomez opened the door and allowed Dr. Young to enter before closing the door behind him and standing in front of it like the diligent guard that he was. Young looked around the room with amusement. This wasn't a standard room for the psychiatric ward. It seemed the family had pretty much appeared to have moved Christopher's entire bedroom set into his room, including his chess set and overstuffed bookcase. Well, in a way that was logical, since it wasn't expected that Christopher was ever going to leave the Hawthorne Institute. This was going to be home for the rest of his life, however long that was going to be.
Good afternoon, Doctor,
Christopher Blackthorn said from his seat on the right side of the chess table. The thin man with glasses had a sad smile on his face.
Robert and I are excited to get to know you.
Robert Diablo from Symphony of Death, Part 1. Written by William Pattison. Narrated by the author. Sound design by William Pattison. a WCP Enterprises production. Copyright 2021, William Pattison.